Thanks for tuning in to the Horror Debate. My name is Jeff Rowdy J. Keir, and with me is Michael Mandy.
And this week we're going to be talking about Sean S. Cunningham's classic, the original Friday the 13th.
The movie that spawned a million sequels.
And a million other copycats, too. I mean, look at the Scream films. They talk about the rules. This movie and Halloween, those two movies, a 1-2 punch, they pretty much set the rules. All movies, all horror movies owe something to Friday the 13th.
Wasn't Friday the 13th before Halloween?
No. Halloween came out in 1978, and Friday the 13th came out in 1980.
Okay, well, I got to say, Friday the 13th, just because it is the first of the series, doesn't mean much in this situation. I don't really care for the first movie.
No?
I don't. I liked it better when you got that, or I like it better when you have that definitive character like Jason. And I know Jason was introduced in the first movie, but he wasn't. We all know he wasn't the killer in the first movie.
It was a dream sequence. Everyone says, oh, yeah, the part at the end where he rises out of the lake and pulls her under. That was a dream sequence.
Yeah. Well, I think Michael Myers had a much more auspicious debut in the first Halloween.
He had much more presence, yeah.
Much more presence.
He was in it.
Just a better character.
Friday the 13th was more of a whodunit.
You're right.
Hey, thanks for the ride. And oh my God, you're after me. I'm going to run away now. You didn't know who the killer was. And it's funny because usually in these kind of films, they give you a clue or a hint somewhere. Like, it was the person sitting at the diner that she walked by at the beginning. No, this movie, you had no clue who it was. And they didn't give you any clues.
Right.
So at the very end... Okay, spoiler warning. Trust me, if you don't know about Mrs. Voorhees in this, if you haven't seen Friday the 13th, go watch it now. And if you haven't, what rock have you
Press
been on?
pause.
Yeah, what are you doing at this site if you haven't seen Friday the 13th? But, Mrs. Voorhees shows up. You don't know who she was, and you rewind that film. Watch every frame of it. She is nowhere in that film. They give you no clues whatsoever.
And which is good, because I get tired of the foreshadowing that basically tells you the entire story.
Yeah.
But for me, again, I think that the first Friday the 13th, to me, it turned into a whole different series. To me, the first movie doesn't even seem continuous with the rest of the series.
Yeah, it was... Yeah, it was all... they didn't expect to make a second or a third or a fourth.
And
they just want to make one
And what
film.
happened to that mentality?
Yeah.
That doesn't exist anymore. Everybody has that hook at the end to create the sequel. And which, when you watch a movie like that's one thing that I'll give it is that, they certainly did not expect to make a sequel or 12. And that was cool because you felt like at the end of the movie it was a definitive end. And of course.
And then, of course, when Jason rises up at the end, everybody screams. That is just the ultimate in horror films. That part when she's laying on the lake and they have the nice music and you see the police drive up and wave at her. The police are there. Everything's going to be all right.
But nobody thought that Jason was going to be the killer in number 2. Well, nobody, first of all, thought there was going to be a number 2, but nobody pinned him to be the killer in the sequel.
Well, the other thing that this film has, you got to admit, that the music. This film would really suck if it wasn't for the music. I mean, that music just adds so much to this film. I mean, the ha 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 choo 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 choo. I mean, who thinks of Friday the 13th and they think of that music? I mean, that's almost like the Jaws theme. That killer is coming kind of. It's perfect for a horror film. And the whole thing about the camp. They're alone. There's no parents to take care of you, just teenagers. And, teenagers, they aren't really responsible themselves. I mean, they're the ones that are smoking and drinking and having sex. And, gee, what happens to teenagers in all these films? The ones who smoke, the ones who drink, the ones who have sex. That's right, the killer gets them all. It's always the nice girl, the virginal girl. They're the ones who survive. Because these films tap into our fears of, crossing the line. Don't do this, don't do that. The bad guy's going to get you. It's like the Grimm's fairy tales, nursery rhymes. Hansel and Gretel, don't go off in the woods, the bad guys. I mean, these are stories basically made to keep teenagers in line. Because the Virgin, man, she's got my odds-on favorite. The Virgin, and the movie that I can think of that set the rule for the surviving lone female, it's got to be Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because no other film I can think of had the single lone girl surviving it all the way to the end. And then this film just reinforced that, and I think just the music, and all that. That's why this movie set the rules.
But again, you know, Friday the 13th Part 1, to me, it set up the story well, but it seems like a whole different series. Yeah. It does not seem like, hey, this is Jason Voorhees, man. It's not like that.
It was just supposed to be a typical early to mid 70s horror film. I mean, what did the filmmakers have to look at the time? They were looking at films like Black Christmas and Don't Answer the Phone.
Oh, yeah.
And He Knows Winners. You're Alone.
Real winners. No.
You know? Well, they had the good points, too. But,
yeah.
You know, this is the movie that set the rules.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And for that, it's valid. I just think if since we're reviewing all of these separate, to stand on its own, okay, and we put Friday the 13th just in its own little package here.
All by itself.
I got to say, it's not all that wonderful, okay? I mean...
It had low production values. It had a low budget.
Yeah, I mean, it's got its moments, sure, but to me, my favorite, I think, of the whole series was number 3. I honestly...
Really? The 3D one?
Yeah, I thought if I remember correctly, which I'm pretty sure I do, I thought number 3 really defined Jason as to who he was.
Mine was the 4th one.
Well,
little Corey Feldman.
Oh, well, I remember the death scene of Jason in the 4th one, if I'm not mistaken, is where he had the knife stuck in his eyeball and he fell forward
all
on
the way down,
and it sliced right there. I loved that scene. Yeah. I thought that was fantastic. That was supposed to be the final chapter.
It was supposed to be.
And then
it made money.
Look what happens.
Yeah. Well, because each film after Part 1 kept losing more and more money. So the producer said, okay, let's end it. But then it made money, and they said, well, wait a second, it's not dead yet.
Sure. Well, Mike, give us the synopsis of the plot.
The plot of the first Friday the 13th, a bunch of teenagers go to Camp Crystal Lake, and one of them is Kevin Bacon.
All right.
Long before he
And if I do remember, he did get footloose in this movie.
I beg your pardon?
I think he did get footloose in this movie.
No, he got a really cool knife sticking out of his throat.
Okay, all right.
That was so cool, seeing that knife just go right through it, and then it twists and turns and twists and turns. Yeah. Tom Savini, that movie just made his career.
Right, I'm sorry. Right. And that's a big name. You're going to hear a lot in a lot of these reviews.
Oh, yeah. Tom Savini is
his work
amazing.
Is unbelievable. Yeah.
Between that and Dawn of the Dead, there's a reason why he is in such high regard.
Right, absolutely. And
the man needs an Academy Award.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, absolutely.
He owns his own makeup school.
When is the Academy going to start seeing these movies as for what they are, and that's art? You know, when is that going to happen?
I don't know. The Zodiac Killer is never going to be seen as a piece of art.
No.
God, that movie was bad.
So anyway, to wrap this thing up, I mean, basically Friday the 13th is the beginning of the whole thing. But
it's your typical killer.
It's your typical.
Killer.
It's way too typical to be the first movie in a series as successful and as well known as Friday the 13th. To me, it's bland. It doesn't define the character because it wasn't about the character, and I understand that. But to me, Friday the 13th, who thinks of Friday the 13th and doesn't think of Jason Voorhees? And
right. It came into its own identity around Part 3 because Part 2. They were copying the film The Town That Dreaded Sundown with the pillowcase and the overalls. He was just supposed to be some weird mongoloid hick living out in the forest.
Right.
He didn't drown. Ooh.
Yeah, right.
So Part 2 is the one no one really cares about. I kind of liked it.
But, and you know, I think I just kind of like Part 2 was it was also sort of bland to me. It started to define the character, but not really, so it just, you know, kind of off the radar. But I do remember Part 3 when it came out, and I watched it several times, and I really dug that one. So, you know, as the character got more and more evolved, if you can say Jason is evolved, devolved. But you know, honestly, Part 1 just doesn't do it, man. I gotta say, if I was to give this stars, in all honesty, don't shoot me, 2 out of 5.
Okay. Well, I give it a few stars just because it's the one that started it all, and it followed the formula. It actually kind of created the formula as it was going, and every horror film owes something to the original Friday the 13th.
Well, that's true. That's true.
You can't have
it's valid for that, and that's why it got 2 stars.
Can't have a dead teenager film without thinking of Friday the 13th.
This is right.
All right. I'm Michael Mandy. He's Rowdy Jeff, and we'll talk to you next time at the Horror Debate.